So what I think about AI, I mean, like you said, Val, right in the beginning, it was very scary to see it and to just hear that it was going to be something new, something that everyone's gonna get, into and start using. And the first initial thought I had, and then that's what I want to jump into after this, is the how scary it could be, the negative connotations around it. Just because I grew up watching stuff like Terminator, and I'm always like afraid of technology, destroying human race. So that's like the first thing. And then when I started using ChatGPT, I was like, oh, I had reasons to be scared, because it is scary. And then when I talk to people in technology and that do those prompts and that create softwares and IT and whatnot, here in Brazil and also in the US, they will explain to me why there are so many different steps that make this a very safe technology, that nothing bad's gonna happen. But to me, even though like they know what they're saying and they're probably right, they probably know this way better than I do, it comes in from here. Yeah, it goes, I mean, I trust them, but I don't think they're right. At the end of the day, I think the technology is going to win, is basically what I'm saying. But like I said, we can get into that later, which is my next question. But for my experience, after all of this initial, I guess, fear or, first, thinking twice before using it and all of that, I use ChatGPT for some help with things that I used to just collaborate with other writers with. I've always had, especially when writing, English is my second/third language, and for me, writing in English has always been, there's always some block, not really a creative block, but there's always a little fear of, would I really say this if I was saying it in my first language? Is this how I would communicate? Is this piece of dialogue right? And sometimes that leads into some kind of creative block. It leads to some kind of limitation, especially when it comes to dialogue. And so sometimes I'll have a whole story in my head, but I will need help with very specific things. And 90% of the time, it's not enough of a reason for me to call someone and like, hey, do you think I should do this? I've done that too. I've collaborated with multiple amazing writers and in short films and in many commercials and in many things that I've worked on before. But I think that with these new tools that I've used, especially ChatGPT, I think that it gives you a whole other perspective, because you can collaborate with it whenever you're working. So let's say it's 2 a.m., everyone's asleep. A lot of creatives go to bed late. That's the case with me. Like, I'm just working really late at night a lot of times, and I don't want to call somebody that late, and I don't want to, ask them to collaborate with me for free on some project. But I can go to ChatGPT and send a prompt and send a couple of ideas, and it's gonna just help me go the right direction. And a lot of times it gives you very responses that are very, I would say, almost childish-like. I don't know if you guys have used it in Spanish at all. I use it in Portuguese, and in Portuguese it's very limited. Not that it has less knowledge necessarily, but the answers it gives you, it sounds like a 10-year-old. So you know what I mean?
So interesting. I haven't used in Spanish, and I didn't think of that.
Try it in Spanish. Let me know what you guys get, just to see. But in Portuguese, it definitely gives me answers that are not as good as it does in English. But anyway, so that's what I have used so far. And I did send some ideas, some programs, some software to you guys that I learned in my master's in storytelling, especially because it was mostly the kind of software that would help create content for different platforms. So every day that goes by, there's a new platform out there. There is Threads just came out from Instagram, which is kind of like a Twitter.
Yesterday, right?
Yeah, like a Twitter competitor, and it has I mean, yesterday it already had 30 million users, and Twitter's going down. So Instagram's going up, and Instagram's part of Meta, so it has like Facebook, it has Threads now. It's a whole thing. It's a whole, I would say almost like a technology, like a revolution going on right now. And what am I getting to with this? It's that there's so many different tools that you can use because there's so many different platforms. And sometimes it takes longer for us to create content for different platforms than it does for us to create the original content in the first place. So we know how to light a scene, we know how to direct, we know how to shoot, how to write, but when we go and we have to edit for different platforms, it takes longer. So I think AI is helping a lot with that kind of mechanical work. You know?
I was going to say that it just helped the process, sometimes helps the brainstorming part, just picking the name for this podcast. We abuse and we end up like picking something that came from us, not from that, but it gave us so many ideas and we try so many different names. I feel like the same thing is with like an image, I try to do this and that, and sometimes it's so detailed that I could look at something that I created with AI and be like, oh, let me recreate this with actual lights, actual camera, and stuff like that. It's been in that point that even the AI helps my creativity to like do things different. Like it's something that you kind of have like a sense of how that would look, but it helps so much with the brainstorming, with building up into an actual idea. So I think that's a positive side, and like how fast it works, because it's scary. I remember just cutting a multicam. I did it for a client, and it will take hours. It will take so much, and even that you could mask your thing and do the multicam and just click here and there, still it takes a lot to like get that process done. And then you use AutoPod and it's boom, business done. And then you can focus in the story, you can focus in the scope, you can focus in so many other things that will make it strong. You cannot rely on it like, oh yeah, this is AI, do the work for me, because like it won't do the work, but it will make the process like faster. So that's definitely something good.
I think that's what a lot of people that don't really understand AI are scared about AI. I think once you start using AI for your work, I would compare it to the first time I learned about the internet when I was a kid. I thought it could answer everything. And funny enough, how I write stuff on ChatGPT is how I used to write stuff when I would go on the internet. I'd be like, hey, how do I do this, this, and this? And then the internet wouldn't really give me a right answer. And now ChatGPT gives me that answer that as a kid, I would think I would have to talk to a computer like I talk to a person. And then now in the computer, you just put, I need 13 water bottles for this, blah, 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 blah. And then it searches it up. Now ChatGPT, you talk to it more like as a person, which is interesting. But everything has its limitations. And the more you use AI, and the more you see, okay, this needs someone to tell it what to do. This needs something to be guided. And once it has that guideline, then it can kind of get to work. And I think that's what people get scared about. People think, oh, it's gonna take my job. It's gonna take this. Maybe some jobs. I'm not gonna be 100% like, oh, AI is not really gonna do that. But it's definitely gonna make a lot of stuff easier. Copywriting. Like instead of having a person copyright everything, now you have all these ideas. Instead of that, I think it is scary to a certain extent. If you put your mind into it. But
so let's jump into that section. Let's talk about that flip side though. You can start, Emmanuel, but let's talk about that, and also if you guys saw the episode, John is awful from Black Mirror, the new season, the first episode. If you want to like touch on that a little bit, but also on the, I guess on the flip side, on the negative sides of where AI can take us, and what's on your mind for that?
I would say this. AI is just another example of how technology can make things easier. And I like to compare it in a way of like back then, let's take music for example. If you want to be a famous artist, a famous musician, You'd have to learn an instrument, be really good at singing, be able to dance, you have to be like the perfect star. And if you look at the biggest stars back then, all of them had that. All of them had their own identity and then could do that to the peak. They weren't just a singer. They were an actor. They were an audience. Like they could get an audience's attention. Nowadays, not saying that artists don't do that, but it's easier to get from knowing nothing to knowing a little bit with technology. Now you can use a laptop to make music. You don't need to go and learn a whole guitar. You can just, boom, put things on your computer, and they can get you closer to that level. You still need to learn, and you still need to get better at it. And I feel like it's the difference between being a novice to knowing a little bit, and then you still have to get to past that point of knowing it to being a professional. I think AI can now get people that don't know too much to that moderate level. You can now know things, and you can now do things better even if you don't know the language, even if you don't know the knowledge, in particular, even if you haven't experienced it, because you can have these ideas and AI can fill in the blanks instead of a person that's been in the industry for 5-10 years and now has all those things filled in their mind and then can do it themselves. You can see the ease of use now with how technology is, like with everything. If you look at like let's say like dishwashing, you just put your plates in a dishwasher and then it cleans it faster. Back then you have to do it all one by one. And things are all moving to that. Now there's technologies that make things a little easier. I think AI would be super useful for coding. You just put a basic code in and then you go in and put a personality into it, make it into something that's more useful. So it's definitely, I think it's a step to kind of get away from that hour grinding work, like the podcast, like editing all those multicams. It definitely can help that and maybe even make you stay more creative as you go along.